Welcome. I'm Larry Olsen, and this is the Brain Vault Podcast. Did you know that the thoughts you're thinking right now are shaping the life you'll live tomorrow? Well, in this podcast, we just don't talk about mindset. We decode the blueprint behind behavior, performance, and possibility. This is where science meets real-world strategy, and your brain stops running on autopilot. If you're ready to turn default thinking into intentional living, you're in the right place.
Welcome, everybody, to the Brain Vault Podcast with Larry Olsen and today, Diane Olsen. I'm going to be interviewing Larry because this is our 200th episode. So much time's gone by, and there's a lot of insights that we think that Larry can share with us. Welcome, Larry.
Well, thank you, Diane. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I want everyone out there to know we're very grateful that you're watching this, and we want to make sure that we make as much impact as possible on your life as these podcasts is made on mine, and has my business partner, who's the COO of our company, as well as my partner in life, Diane, and we've been together now, come July, 30 years, and it's been amazing. So I'm so thrilled that she happens to be the one that's doing this interview.
Thank you. Well, let's jump right in, okay? So, Larry, before we jump into talking about the 200th episode of the Brain Vault podcast, I want to go back to the very first one. And what was happening in your life or in work that made you decide to make a podcast?
Well, work had been booming at the time, and I was heavily involved in several corporate clients. Then the pandemic hit, and the majority of the work that I was doing was in person, doing several sessions with lots of people, as well as one-on-ones with leadership. And as of March of 2021, that no longer existed. And I know there's a lot of leaders out there who remember that and probably were as impacted as greatly as we were. So we needed to figure out what could we do. And someone had brought up the idea about you should do podcasts. And no, I don't need to do podcasts. I don't even know about podcasts. And so we went ahead and we did our first podcast, and it was much easier than I thought it was. And I found it absolutely fascinating to be able to peel the onion on people's lives and find out more than just what it was they were doing, but why they were doing it and what took place in their life, just like the question you asked me to get involved in to begin with.
All right. Yeah. Well, who did you imagine would be on the other end of the first recording?
Who did I imagine who would be on the other end of the first recording?
Who would your audience be? Who were you thinking was there?
I wanted to appeal in the beginning to anyone out there who was finding it challenging to be able to live this amazing miracle we've all experiencing right now, which is being alive. And there's a lot of challenges that people face, whether it's in parenting or in leadership or just being a friend to somebody, or more importantly, how they were talking to themselves. And so I wanted people who were in a position in their life where they recognized that this isn't working. I may be successful over here or successful over there, but as far as how I'm feeling about my life while I'm going through it, I know it could get better. And also I wanted to appeal to those in life who felt that they were kind of stifled a little bit. They'd gotten to a point in their life where everything was going well, and then pandemics come along. As we know, any kind of an obstacle that hits us in our life can be as impactful as that pandemic was when we don't treat it properly. So, like anything, how can we win in this situation? And that's the mindset that we had, which how do we go about winning in this situation? Well, we can't go back to what we were doing. So
Mhm.
we need to find out, something new. And that was, I think, a theme that we had the opportunity to offer to everyone out there.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, it's funny you brought up, a bit of that. What was the first name of the podcast, and what made you come up with that name before it was The Brain Vault?
Well, the first name of the podcast had to do with what we deal with, and that is the mind brain combination. And and so the mind, which is the narrative we have going on 24/7, and this elusive creature that none of us have been able to see, but we see life through it. Um, and so we thought, well, how important is it that you have the right mindset?
Yeah.
And then when we thought about it, every one of us has been pre-programmed prior to coming into life to begin with from a genetic perspective. And then we're also pre-programmed relative to the experiences that we have in life. And it's not the experience that impacts us, it's how we actually talk to ourselves about the experience. And that gets recorded neurologically in the cells of our brain. And our brain in science is known as a servo mechanism. So, which means it's a robot
Mm.
and it just responds and reacts as it's been programmed to do. So with that being said, we thought, well, how do people get out of these jams? Just what is the play that they run? I mean, if you
Mhm.
think about it in athletic terms, you have a playbook and it's developed and built to be able to overcome just about any situation you find yourself in. Thus, mindset playbook.
Yeah. Yeah, nice. And then there was a switch over to the Brain Vault podcast. What does that name mean to you personally?
Well, where is every opportunity stored? It's almost like a treasure chest, but I didn't want to call it the treasure chest. I mean, I think vault is something that all of us think in terms of when we think about where important things are in our lives and we want to make sure that we take care of it, or where you can get things from that can really positively impact your life. And that's where Vault came up. And
Mm.
since we're so involved in performance driven neurology, which is something we've trademarked, which is, as you know, a combination between neuroscience and cognitive psychology, explaining why we do what we do day in and day out. Well, if you can't get into the vault, you can't change the programming. If you can't change the programming, you can't transform your life. And you can try hard, and we all know try implies doubt. Doubt leads to hesitation, and hesitation leads to failure. So we really wanted to get into what our relationship has been, and it's been transformative. I mean, you are still you, I'm still me, but I would hope that, and I believe that we're higher level than when we first met. And that's because you and I have chosen on purpose to be honest at the expense of the relationship. Because I think if you can't be transparent, then you hide what's actually going on, and it doesn't give the partner an opportunity to do anything about it. And sometimes people don't know what to do about it. So what they do is they just try not to behave that way. And
And thus the Brain Vault came up for you.
and then the brain vault was what you need to open to be able to now see things differently.
Yeah. Nice. I like it. All right. So was there ever a moment at the beginning that you just wanted to stop? This is too much.
Um I don't think it was ever this is too much. I think it was this is frustrating.
Mm.
And that can be termed as this is too much. And the reason it was, and I think anyone out there who's has their own business or leads a business recognizes that sometimes you hire the wrong people and they're
Mm.
just tough to work around. And it's generally their attitude. They can have all the competency in the world, but if the world's painted black for them and every beautiful cloud is going to ultimately blown away and storms are going to come in, um, I just found that I don't operate very well around that type of, mindset,
Mm,
and, and so what had been irritating and, frustrating and getting to the point where I don't know if I wanna do this anymore is we were just starting out, so we were taking on just about anybody we could take on, and
mm,
we don't have, by the way, any published, podcast with these people on there. Um, we're pretty selective on making sure that we have people that have a robust for life and whether they're feeling robust now in their lives. But we wanted to surround ourselves with like-minded people, people who are curious and are feel challenged and yet look at it as excitement and an adventure as
mhm.
opposed to, oh golly, I can't wait till this is gone. Because that's just unhealthy. I mean, you put a lot of cortisol in your system, and when you're focused on how can I get out of this situation instead of
Yeah.
how can I make the most of this situation.
Well, and that kind of is my next question. At that point where you thought maybe I wanted to stop or this is too much, what got you through that point to keep going? Because 200 episodes is a lot.
Well, I think this is what all of us need. We need feedback, and the answer is you. That you'd see me discouraged, and I said, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And you go, why do you not want to do it anymore? And you just ask questions. You were curious about why I was feeling that way. You didn't try to talk me out of it. You just wanted me to understand what had convinced myself of. And
Mhm.
is that really real? Or is that just something you need to grow out of because perhaps you're a little out of your comfort zone right now?
Yeah.
And that was, and I really thank you for that, or we'd be in no danger of having this 200th episode.
Well, and I'm sure you mean me as your producer.
Yes, yes, yeah. One of your many titles.
Yes, yes. Okay, great, great. Um, so let's kind of dive in a little bit about those 200 episodes. And you've sat across from the camera, the screen with 200 people who are all trying to lead better, think better. What is one thing that surprised you most about what they all have in common?
It's something that I had been challenged with my entire life, and that was no matter how many accolades I got, no matter how many things went right in my life, um, I still felt that I could have done better. I had difficulty accepting compliments, and when I started doing these podcasts with people that I had held in the highest esteem, and I don't mean that in the past tense that I don't still hold them in the highest esteem. What I mean is that I started to peel the onion. They felt the same way I did.
Mm,
They had difficulty accepting compliments. They had difficulty feeling that. And the one thing that I learned about that was that a lot of us have been brought up to believe that if we kind of take a moment or too long of a moment to think about the great job we've done, we'll lose our edge.
mm,
We won't be motivated any longer because we'll feel we already arrived.
mm,
And all of these episodes I've done with people that are far more intelligent than I am, um, recognize that we're in no danger of that happening. That just because you celebrate, just because you have the ability to be able to say thank you, that really makes me feel good that you feel that way and that happened to you as a result of learning how to think differently. I began to recognize that it's not about being perfect.
mm,
It's that what I learned so much from these people is that they're all works in progress.
mm,
And I don't think I had one person, Diane, on those podcasts that wasn't grateful for being on the podcast.
nice.
So that in itself was renewing.
Yeah, yeah. Um, did that surprise you, or did you expect that everyone would feel that way, or that's what would come up?
It doesn't surprise me now, and I don't expect it now, but it certainly surprised me in the beginning
Mhm.
because I think anytime we really don't have an identity, we really don't know who we are if we're not in a relationship. Because otherwise, the only feedback we're getting is from ourselves. And because of our reptilian brain, the amygdala, we
Mm.
have a tendency to look at the dark side, to look at what if this happens? What if that happens? What if it doesn't work? What if I'm laughed at? What if I'm, what if I don't get picked? Well, all of these fears are designed from the amygdala, which is there for the fight, flight, freeze, designed to make sure that we survive,
Mm.
that we learn how to avoid these dangerous situations, or we learn how to prepare for these dangerous situations. But that doesn't necessarily take the fear away. I think when you get too prepared for these dangerous situations, you're in a constant cortisol drip, and that's not healthy. To be prepared in a way that you don't have to be fearful now, that you can be confident now, not
Mm.
overly confident, not arrogant, not to the point where I'm impervious and nothing will ever hit me. I
Yeah.
think that's when you can get blindsided, and so that is how I would deal with that particular question. Is I really and I still to this day I get renewal from doing a podcast with
Right.
high performing people who are just like you and I. And that's what's so amazing about us. We're more alike than different when it comes to what is the real essence of how we feel about self, how we feel about others, and how we go about attempting to have the best possible life we can have, regardless of the circumstances we find ourselves in.
Yeah. Nice. That's really nicely said.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
And Larry, so of all the guests you've spoken with, who who changed the way you see your own work, do you feel?
I I would say that first off, I would never identify a guest. If I picked one, I just told the other 199 that they're in line for number 2 down to 199 or 200. So, and the other thing is, there wasn't a favorite. I think every single one of them I had transformed me
Mm.
in a way that I didn't go into it that way. In fact, I have had my staff select people based on the criterion that we've set. And when I read about who they were, read their book, um, checked out their website, looked at their social media, and there were a few I decided I don't want to do them.
Okay.
And you can attest to this. How many times after did I come up and tell you that's one of the best one I've ever done? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and tell us more, everybody listening, what does that feel like?
I that it's the old adage, you can't tell a book by the cover, okay?
Mm.
And yet you can't sell a book without a cover. Um, and I just thought of that right now, that the cover is a pretty important thing because it
Mhm.
it gives us the opportunity to ask ourselves if I'm interested or not. But until you start reading, until you open it up, until you get past the trailer and into the movie, and still until you get into people's lives, you really begin to find out that they aren't anything you thought they were. And this is
Mm.
what's so positive and negative about our brain, and that is it's quick to make its mind up, because if it's not, we could be put in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And it makes its mind up based not on what we could know, but what we already do know, stored neurologically in the cell of our brain. So we have found that since 95% of our day we're unconscious, literally meaning that all we're doing is reacting from one past experience to another to handle the moments that are going on in our life right now.
Mhm.
And that's what Einstein stated is if you keep doing what you're doing, expecting different results, everybody goes, "Oh, yeah, you're insane." And we do that 95% of our day. So the idea that I discovered through all of this is that you need to change the programming in your brain, and then that'll transform. It'll transform your mind. It'll transform how you
Mm.
talk to yourself. It'll transform all of, and so what happens is you start to evolve, you start to grow, you start to get better even in
Mhm.
bad situations.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that is it's almost like a self-perpetuating machine. The more you open up and the more you share, and I'm telling you that I ask questions. I don't prepare them in advance. I use my questions. My questions occur to me based on what I'm hearing this person say. And I want to know why they're saying that. I don't let them get into, what do they call it? The elevator spit, elevator
Y
pitch.
y
I don't let them get into the trite, they've already got the answers to their questions. I will never ask a question that is pre-chosen for me in their one page because they'll have, here's a good way to introduce, here's a bunch of questions you can ask, because then I'm going to get the same old answers.
Mhm.
And after each interview I've done up to this point, they said, that was a lot of fun. And if anyone has ever had someone interested in them to the point where they ask them, continually asking questions about them
Mhm.
and what they meant by that, that's a time of our lives because it's so rare that somebody actually takes the time to listen to us to begin with.
Yeah.
But then more importantly, to have follow-up questions. So what it is we're sharing without being accusational, without shaming, without competing, without judgment.
Mhm.
And I think that's why this is so fun for me because it reminds me, be careful of doing that to others.
Ah, nice. Yeah, that's a good point.
Thank you.
Um, do you feel that doing the podcast has changed you as a person?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think more than change me, what it's done is it's and I want people to understand what I mean by this. Change doesn't last very long. Change is temporary. It gets us out of a situation. Transformation is engagement. Transformation is lifelong. It's those aha moments in our lives, and you can
Yeah.
have those a lot during the day if you stop just reacting with the same old information you've been doing all along. So, how has it transformed me?
Mhm.
It's made me more open.
Oh.
Um, Open-mindedness is an oxymoron, by the way, and what I mean by that is it's two words that don't work together. And when I talk with leadership, I always ask them, "Are you open-minded?" And what do you think most of them say?
Oh, of course.
Of course.
Of course.
But I tell them it's an oxymoron, and the only oxymoron I know that's not mean-spirited is jumbo shrimp. I mean, everything else, it knocks somebody, and the challenge with knocking someone is you don't know the impact that it had on them. They may be, laughing on the outside, but how are they feeling on the inside? And leaders know now, and if they don't, they should, that morale and performance match. So
Mm,
anytime you've done anything in an organization or a family to affect morale, you're affecting the entire culture and everyone in it, not just the person that got struck, because then they throw a pebble in their pond and then that it affects everybody else around.
mm,
So I really believe that I have made these movements in my life because I've been blessed to be able to have the opportunity to interview these people
yeah.
and to allow them on air to discover for themselves why they think and speak and act the way they do.
Mm,
And so that's been fun.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
we really get a lot of aha moments in that.
Well, and what a great gift for you and a great gift for the guest.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank
right?
you.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at performance-driven neurology. Okay? That's the framework of what we teach, and you've had 200 episodes of these conversations. Um, did it deepen your framework or challenge it or both?
What do you mean by framework?
Well, I guess, your perspective. So
Yeah, I just today had I got to play golf. It's been a long time, but I got to play golf today, and I didn't do too bad, which was kind of fun as well. Um, and I got to play with my son, so that's always enjoyable, as you know, when we get together with our kids. Um, and what was the question again?
well, the lens is performance-driven neurology that you teach and you
Yeah.
speak
Oh,
about, right?
thank you. Thank you.
And, is there stuff, there are points that you used to teach, then after 200 episodes, you don't teach that or that change some of the framework?
Yeah, yeah, I do, and the reason I brought up that golf example was they asked me, why can't you stay longer?
Mm,
Because I needed to do this podcast. "Oh, what's it about?" And I said, "Well, we're in the business and we've trademarked it as kind of our definition of what we do, which is performance-driven neurology." And
mhm,
people are always fascinated. "Oh, what's that?" And when they find out it's about them and how they think, they're even more fascinated.
mm,
And what I used to teach that I don't teach anymore was I used to teach, um, affirmations. I used to
mm,
teach that you needed to say these statements to yourself. And that was before I discovered a concept called sponsoring thought.
oh,
And this came from a book that I read, or maybe it was even one of the podcasts that I've done. Um, And it's all about the fact, and I had a gentleman that was an example of this. He came up to me one time and he goes, "Larry, I wanna quit smoking. I've read your books, I've gone through your programs, and I don't know if something's wrong with my affirmations. Could you read them?" And, so I read them all, and they were great. They were all first person present tense, and they were all acting as if he already was a non-smoker without you saying non-smoker, because that reminds us of smoking. And he goes, I just don't know what to do. Is there something else I should be doing?" And speaking of sponsoring thoughts, now you'll find out what I mean by that. I said, "Well, let me ask you a question." He goes, "What is it?" I go, "Do you wanna quit?" And there was a pause, Diane, and he goes, "No." I go, "Come talk to me when you do."
that's
And
great.
because it's not about pretending that if I think a certain way, then all of these wonderful things will happen to me.
Mhm,
That's fairy tale. That's very romantic. It's a great concept and idea. But generally, and this is what I've really found out about moving from change to transformation, and that is, why would you want to begin with?
mm,
Why do you want that to begin with? And when you start to ask people, they pause. They can only answer so many questions you've asked,
yeah,
to the point where they're asking themselves, "Why do I want it?" And if it was something you wanted 20 years ago or 10 years ago, you wanted it because you thought it was going to overcome something. You may have overcome that along the way.
yeah,
And so now it's not a driver any longer. And
mhm,
so it's really a matter of people sitting down, and it's much easier in an interview process or a coaching process. And it doesn't matter how talented you are, how smart you are, how successful you are. The 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 most healthy and well balanced people have someone that they talk to.
mm, yeah,
If they're not blessed to have a spouse like I do and a partner in business like I do, that I can talk to and know that you have my best interests at heart
yeah.
and aren't afraid to tell me when I'm off base, then we get stuck in thinking that something magical is going to occur that'll transform our lives. And it's really basically a greater understanding of this wonderful, wonderful organ in our body called the brain, and understanding more about how the mind and brain work. So we become more conscious, not self conscious, but more conscious of that narrative that we have going on 24/7,
Mm.
because that gives us all of the keys to make all of the transformation. It gives us all of the understanding of what the perceived obstacles are that are generally just a symptom. They're not the real problem.
Ah,
And that is where you get into this sponsoring thought, if you will.
nice. Yeah, that's a great point. Um, so
Thank you.
let me ask you, Larry. You've spoken with leaders from North America, United Kingdom, Europe, Asia. Does the neuroscience of performance-driven neurology show up differently across cultures, or is it more universal than people expect?
Well, the fact that we all have a brain, the same brain, by the way, no matter what culture you take the brain out of, there's that commonality in why we do what we do as far as the real driver of it. Now, where the programming takes place, where what the culture is really about, for instance, in the United States, wisdom isn't as appreciated as much as it is in, let's say, Japan, where the older you get, the more reverence you have, and the more attention and value, if you will. In the United States, a real young mindset. It's all about youth and how you look, and it's not trivial because there's a lot of very deep people with a lot of wisdom,
Mhm.
but it's a different culture, and so it gets applied differently. This same beautiful organ and mind that we have has been conditioned differently to
Mm,
behave differently, to act differently, to value different things. And it's really not right or wrong. It only becomes right or wrong when one country chooses to impose itself on another, or one individual chooses to impose themselves on another. I
mm,
mean, it's doesn't matter if it's micro or macro. Um, Anytime that we want to make a change in someone other than ourselves, we are imposing.
yeah,
And so I attempt in my interviews not to be imposing. I don't want them to do it my way. I want to find out their way and look for opportunities to enhance the way I do things.
yeah, okay. Yeah, and has the international reach of the podcast, which it has reached, I think it's 31 countries. Um, what has that taught you about human beings in general?
That we are miraculous. That and I share this in some of my podcasts that a lot of people just don't recognize they spend more time thinking about what's going on in their life than how they got a life
Mm,
and what the chances of life are to begin with. And it's really astronomical, and people can't even fathom this. But there's a 1 in 400 trillion.
wow.
Now, a million is, as we know, a million is 199,000 to a million, and then a billion is 1,000 million, and a billion is 1,000 million, and a trillion is 1,000 billion. I mean, it just gets to the point where it's just, nobody, we don't, most people don't have that in their checking account. So it's not something that we can really get a grip on, but if I told you that I had a business proposition for you and I needed you to invest in it, and there's a 1 in 400 trillion chances it will be successful. Diane, no one in their right mind would invest in that.
Yeah,
That would be ridiculous, but
yeah,
that's what the odds are of being alive,
no,
and here we are, and no one in the history of man has ever popped out of the womb without a brain, and
mhm,
they had nothing to do with the creation or designing of the brain. It's miraculous what it's capable of doing, and the more we find out, the more in awe we are. Even science considers it a miracle. Because
Wow.
once they discover something, that opens them up to being able to see something they never saw before or to understand a new way that they hadn't even considered before. And
Mm,
now with AI and the opportunity to ask the right questions, we're getting all kinds of new information.
mhm,
And so when you have this thing called life and you have this wonderful organ called the brain, you can either let life program the brain based on what happens to you, and then you'll behave that way 95% of the day without having to think,
mm,
or you can decide how you want to show up in life, program the brain in that direction, and that's how you will live your life. And then all of these things you wanted start dropping at your doorstep.
mm,
You really don't have to be working at it any longer to try to get something that you already have. And that is this sense of joy, this sense of happiness, this sense of contentment. And even though there's things that you don't like going on in your life, you learn how to appreciate it for what it is and then move on. You don't bring it into the next moment and then bring that into the next moment. Pretty soon, you're bringing so much into the moment, you can't be in the moment.
yeah,
You're not present. And that's something that we spend a lot of time on helping people become is more present.
yeah, yeah. And outside of professionally, you think knowing this, personally, have you been surprised that the versatility of how each culture really takes to this podcast?
Um, I haven't. I haven't. I have not been surprised. I mean,
Okay.
it's there's nothing more fascinating no matter what the culture, and if there isn't a language barrier, because that's the only thing that could keep it from
Sure.
happening, and
Yeah.
I ask people to forgive me for not knowing your language, um, because if I did, I would speak in it, and we will, at some point, we'll offer in multitude of languages what we have to offer,
Mhm.
but in the meantime, um no, I haven't been surprised at all. I think what it has done is just reaffirm that what we have learned and what we share and don't no longer share, like this affirmation thing I talked about, we call them vision statements, which is a statement of fact or belief accepted literally by your subconscious. Because this is what most people don't know. When you're wanting to transform, your brain doesn't know whether you're telling you or someone
Mm,
else is telling you or the circumstance you were in told you.
yeah.
Um, it goes ahead and acts upon it regardless. And that's why it's so important that you develop a bit of a filter system to be able to not be impacted by absolutely everything unless you choose to be.
Mm,
And all of those things are more than possible. We own them. And so, but it's interesting. We can't use something that we own if we don't know we own it. If we don't know we have it, if we think it's somewhere else. If I just had that, then and unfortunately, that's where a lot of people live their lives. If I just had this or if I just knew that, then, um, and I spent a lot of my years with that mindset.
yeah. And so you feel that that crosses cultures. There's no barrier. It's
No, no
no.
barrier.
Okay.
Like only one that going on right now is as far as my communication with others is language.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, so Larry, 200 episodes. That is a lot of time, a lot of preparation, a lot of your life. Going deep, what has the podcast cost you personally, do you feel?
The only thing we can't get back in our lives is our time,
Mhm.
and so it's cost time. But the return on the cost has far exceeded the cost. And I'm not trying to sound like the eternal optimist here. Um, I've had to give up some beliefs Even though I really fell in love with them, which I warn leaders not to do. Don't fall in love with your belief, or you'll have a meeting asking, what do other people think? But they already know your mind's already made up.
Yeah.
So they just humor you. Um, it's really, it's cost me the, what it's really cost me is when I go, I can't believe I was behaving like that.
Mm,
And yet there's such a return on investment that Diane, there's really no cost other than not having to be encumbered with something that was holding you back,
okay.
and that's what has occurred in my life,
Mhm.
and trust me, a lot of things have held me back, and a lot of things continue to hold me back, but as I become aware of them, there's a concept to if you name it, you tame it. If you go, "I'm feeling fearful right now. Why am I feeling fearful?" All of a sudden, you're able to get yourself to a position where you're not in fright any longer
Mm, okay.
because you've named it, which tames it. But if you just act upon the fear, "Oh, what's gonna happen? Oh, I," then you've manifested it, and
Yeah.
fear is imagined anyway. Danger is something else again.
Oh, okay.
Danger is hearing a growl at your door and the door vibrating from the pounding on it. That's danger. Fear is imagining what would happen if there was a growl at the door and if there was somebody pounding on it. Fear is imagining if what if I didn't get that promotion? Fear is imagining what if I present that idea and people don't like it? Fear is a and so what happens is people without even knowing it spend more time. 95% of people are fear-based.
Oh,
Were you aware
wow.
of that?
No.
Fear-based. Now, fear does not mean someone's holding a gun to your head or the door just busted open and there's a bear
Mm,
who's salivating at the thought of you. Um, Fear is this whole concept. Oh, here's fear. Now, there's no gun to the head. Okay, 95% of people operate from it. Fear is doing something to avoid something else from happening.
yeah.
Fear
Wow.
is making money so you don't lose your home or you don't have a place to stay. Less than 5% of people operate from value. And
Wow.
companies, 95% of corporate America operates from fear as well. If you don't do this, you won't get that position. And if this doesn't happen, and a lot of people will attend a meeting, Diane, not because they want to be at the meeting, because they don't want to be respected by not being at the meeting. That's a
Mhm.
real subtle fear mechanism.
Okay.
And performance, any idea what percentage of performance you're able to receive when operating by fear?
Gonna put me on the spot, Larry.
Well, you're doing a good interview now because I know you know, but thank you for not answering that. That was wonderful. As Here's how much of your performance, of what you're capable of, you're able to realize when motivated by fear, less than 10%.
Mm,
So part of our education with corporate America and small businesses as well as athletes and entrepreneurs or anyone that's really looking to transform their lives is you need to be motivated based on value, not fear. And the companies that motivate by value, do you know what percentage of performance they're able to realize? And most people would do the numbers and they go, well, 95%. If you only, excuse me, 90%, if you're only getting 10% from fear
right.
based and only nine. So this is what's so fascinating is companies are competing against one another on a false model. And that is they're motivating their people out of fear. Even if you
Mm,
put bonuses on it or money on it, if this doesn't happen, you're not going to get that. We may not phrase it that way.
yeah.
And we have found, and Daniel Pink has done great studies on this, but we have found that even throwing money at it just intimidates people even more because now there's more at stake if I fail.
Yeah.
And the moment you say, I got to do this, what you do is you trigger the amygdala, which begins to not download, but slow down the frontal lobes. So you don't have the focus any longer. You don't have the resilience. You don't have the ability to envision and to forecast. So there's no advantages to being fear-based. But
Yeah.
if you motivate people based on value, people go, well, that must be 90%. No, it's a symbol. And the symbol is infinite. The only limitation is the one you place on self or another.
Wow. Wow. I'm gonna step back to something you said earlier and kinda tie it into that.
Okay.
You had mentioned there was several things, beliefs that you had to give up to be into the podcast and keep going and charge. Share with us just one of those beliefs you had to give up.
I had to give up the belief that I don't perform at the highest level that some of these people perform at. I haven't accomplished what some of these people have accomplished.
Mhm.
A big one used to be I don't have a doctorate. I mean, I've had so many doctors on, and their life isn't any different than mine. There wasn't anything magical about it only would have impacted how I viewed myself, and I began to recognize the power of labels
Ah,
and what happens to us when we don't have the label that we want or what we think would make us different than when we are now, or we'd be more successful if we and and I began to find out that and I don't really like the analogy. Well, everybody puts one leg in, and that they put the pants on the same way,
yeah.
kind of a thing, right? Um, Big deal, okay? But that whole thing about I don't have to be any better than I currently am to be able to have the time of my life in this moment. And soon as I put it, as long as, or as soon as, or once as soon as I add any of that to it, I'm not enough in this moment now.
Mm, okay.
And what's the only time any of us have in life? This
Right.
moment, right now. What would you say?
I said right now.
That's right. Yeah. I
Um,
love your smile.
so that is a belief that you had to embrace.
Yeah, it's one I didn't want to. It's one I didn't want to share with anybody. I didn't want to ever tell anybody, I feel less than.
Mhm,
And that's something, and it's probably why I got into this business.
mhm,
It's not the absolute reason I got into this business. That was my
mhm,
sister. But why I got into this business was to shore that up. And then I got to the point where I realized that isn't going to shore it up. I'm going to
mhm.
have to give myself permission to be ready now.
Wow.
And, once I did, and I have to continue that. There's moments that I have to remind myself I'm ready now.
Mhm.
So bring it on. This is what's so powerful about that, Diane, and our listeners, is then I don't have to be worried about how I'm doing.
Wow.
Okay. Now I can just ask myself, what are you contributing? Instead of how am I doing? I wonder, did I answer that question the right way? Oh, I forgot what the question was. I got so into so many stories. And instead I went, what was the question again?
Mhm,
Which made me vulnerable, showed that I didn't remember it. Oh my golly, gee whizzers. Now people are going to stop listening to me because I asked what was the question again. And I think that's where the greatest value that's come from a lot of these interviews is recognizing that we're all gonna get better, but we're enough now to
mhm.
deal with whatever's going on in our lives in this moment.
Nice. Yeah. Well, that is a perfect segue, Larry,
Oh.
because you told us about something, a belief you had to give up, but on the opposite side, um, what has this podcast given you that nothing else in your career has?
I think I answered that now that I hear the question, when I said, um, you're great right now, Larry. You're gonna get better, but right now you're great, so let's make it about them.
Okay. Yeah. And, has it
Inst
changed your
instead
relation?
of instead of how you doing, Larry? Then you have that third person watching you in your brain. "How you doing? Oh, you shouldn't have said that. Well, they didn't react very well to that. Oh, that person seems interested. Oh, that one doesn't seem to like what you're." You get all caught up in that, and now you don't really have anything to offer anymore
Yeah.
because 'cause you've sidetracked yourself. So, that's probably one of the I wanna thank all of the 200, or excuse me, the 199. I can thank myself too,
That's right.
uh, for giving me that opportunity to discover that.
Yeah, great. Are there moments where you have to quiet that part of your brain during a podcast?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yes, there's moments where, um, someone will say, I just sold my company for $1 billion." And, I go, "Well, my company's not worth $1 billion." So now I've just become less than. And when you're less than, you start thinking about yourself. You start this narrative, and when you're talking to yourself, you can't listen to what somebody else is saying. Then I'll miss what they were saying, so I can't ask a question about it. And then I start talking to myself about that, and it's a self-perpetuating kind of a domino effect. And I've learned to be able to, once the domino, you can pull the next domino out and stop all the rest of the millions of dominoes dropping. You don't have to just watch them all go because you did something that you think was stupid. Um, I've always been a believer in keep it simple. This KISS. This is old concept, but I say it, keep it simple, superstar. The old way of saying it was keep it simple, stupid. Well, who would want to tell themselves they're stupid for crying
Mm,
out loud and then expect to be intelligent? Our brain
great.
follows directions, so then it looks for more things we've done that were stupid.
Mm,
Now we're a believer that I'm capable of being stupid. Well, we're all capable of not being perfect in any moment, but it's not about perfection, as I mentioned earlier.
yeah.
It's about progress. We are discovering ourselves every moment. And the more we discover about what this incredible human being is capable of, we start feeding it differently. We start treating it differently. We start recognizing the uniqueness and the once in a lifetime. Every one of us is going to find out what happens after this life. But why don't we live this life in the meantime and be ready as wonderfully as we can be for whatever opportunity um, not being here brings?
Well, and who doesn't like to be a superstar?
Hello. And we were born that way.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Has it changed you as a husband?
Um, I think that has probably been the greatest learning that I've ever had in my life is having a partner. And I not a lot of people aren't aware of this, but I I'm going to share this. Excuse me. I've been married 3 times, and the first 2 marriages didn't work out, and I used the old leadership adage, which is if at first you don't succeed, fix the blame fast. And most of them go, no, no, that's not how it works. It's try again. No, it's not. Don't find fault with yourself because then you could grow. Find fault with whoever else. And then you know what? I realized at one point, Diane, that there was a common denominator in each marriage, and it was moi. And I recognize if I don't change, I don't transform who I am, I will attract another opportunity to not be successful. And there's too many people involved. There's children involved, there's family involved. There's never really anything as a wonderful divorce because it didn't work and people are got used to you or comfortable with you or loved you and now you're out of the picture. Um So you and I will be celebrating our 28th wedding anniversary in September.
Woo.
That's right. And, this July, as I mentioned earlier, we'll have known each other for 30 years.
Mhm.
So you would think that then some people would say, so you figured it out then, huh? No, I have not figured it out. What I've figured out is I'm a true believer in a work in progress, and I'm a true believer in forgiveness, a true believer in second chances, 12 chances, 1,000 chances. As you know, I think we're going on our billionth chance by now. But I think what happens in any relationship, it's not what you say, it's the actions that are real, where the real truth lies. You said you were going to do this. Did you do that?
Mhm.
There's nothing that upsets a partner more, whether it's a leader and their associates or if it's a relationship, if you say something and don't do it, because the only thing we have is our word. And as you know, honey, you can only apologize about doing the same thing so many times
Mm.
before I've heard this before.
Yeah.
And so the greatest opportunity that I've had, the greatest gift that I've had outside of my children and you is having someone in my life that holds me accountable when I'm off track.
Mhm.
And when you build an organization like that or a family like that, and you do it with love, you don't shame, you don't blame, you don't judge when someone's off track.
Mhm.
You come from love. Doesn't mean your words aren't hard, doesn't mean that you're not disappointed, doesn't mean maybe that you're not angry or that you're upset. But all of that is coming from love because the person you love has behaved in a way that doesn't bring out the best in them. And, and in front of everyone, I thank you for
Oh, yeah.
being that person in my life.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And you are that person in my life also.
Shucks. Thank you. Thank you.
Um, but how is the podcast? Do you think the podcast has changed you as a husband?
That sounds, I'm having a deja vu experience. So it sounds a lot like the question you asked me that I didn't answer. Um, I, yes, it does. I am exhilarated after a podcast. And even when I go into it, as I mentioned earlier, with a little skepticism based on what I've, read about the cover of this person, if you
Yeah.
will, um, I get affirmed that what I've learned is accurate, which is so important to me. And when I hear people who have applied a part of it and the
Mhm.
results that they've received, because there's that old concept that most of us are from Missouri, and on the Missouri state license plate, it says "Show me state." And the show me state is the state of mind that most of us have. Well, show me. Okay, prove it. Because I'm not going to listen, believe it until you prove it. Well, they're really not asking you to prove it. They're saying, give me enough information so I can prove it to myself.
Okay.
Because if I can prove it to myself, I'll continue to take action on it. I will begin to transform because I'm learning how to change my mind now, not just temporarily trying to change my behavior to get through this moment because I'm having Thanksgiving with a group of people I'd rather not be with. Or whatever that is that you've mindsetted in on your way into that event. And that's where people can have so much more fun is if they allow themselves to be curious and they allow themselves to show up at whatever event it is, no matter how many times they've been to that event, looking for 3 things that make them glad they were there.
Wow.
That is transformative. If
Yeah.
anyone out there goes ahead and puts that into practice, pick someone that you don't enjoy being around at work, but you have to be around them. Pick a child that you find more annoying than another one, only because they're constantly challenging you. And then do this for 1 week. See 3 things each day that contradict that belief that you have. why
Wow.
they're annoying, and it'll transform you.
Wow, I can see totally where that would transform any relationship, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's move on here. You teach that your brain can only see what you are thinking about. What has doing this podcast programmed your own RAS, which you can tell us what the RAS is, to see that you might have missed before?
Um, well, a little stat for everyone out there. There, depending on who you read, what, neuroscience scientist you read, there's anywhere from 1,000,000 to 1,000,000,000 bits of information our brain is processing per second. Now think about this, anywhere from 1,000,000 to 1,000,000,000 bits of information our brain is processing per second.
Mhm.
Imagine if you were aware of all of that. We'd be wide out. There'd be no danger of hearing me or thinking or anything else. So we have a filter system. It's called the reticular activating system. It connects the spinal cord to the brain. And what it does, it's called the alerting device. It's how we slip in from unconsciousness to consciousness. And it does a lot of care and making sure a lot of subconscious processes are taking place in the meantime as well. But it's a filter. What that means is if our brain's capable of processing 1,000,000 to 1,000,000,000 bits of information per second, how many bits can our conscious mind become aware of per second? And it's
Mm.
only 20 to 40.
Wow.
So it's point, 0.1% of what it's capable of. So
Mhm.
this is what's miraculous about us as human beings. We have this filter system that filters out 90 because nothing gets into our nervous system or our brain becomes aware of without first being filtered out. And it
Okay.
filters out 99.99999 after that 99, 5 more
Wow.
nines percent of the information and only lets in that. And this is what's so important, everyone. That which we've predetermined is significant.
Mm.
And that's when if people have ever bought a car, and then in the next week they see the same car everywhere, but they didn't even notice them before. Um, we know that happens. We know that if I ask you to look for the color red, you're going to look for the color red. And then when I say, why didn't you look for green? You said, because you said red. Well, every conversation we have alerts our brain to what we're to look for. And then the filter becomes what we predetermined is significant.
Mhm.
So if I've going to a party and I didn't want to be there, then my filter system is finding all the reasons to support why I didn't want to be there. Because the brain is all about predictability. It would rather have us right than successful.
Mm.
That's why we get into arguments, we get defensive, we're trying to defend our right to stay the same.
Yeah.
Now, so with that going on, I have to kind of recognize that. Reframe that question just a little
Sure.
bit so I can bring us back here on track.
Well, first off, I'm not sure that we named what the RAS is.
Yeah,
Um,
reticular activating system.
yeah, okay. And just kind of how has that with the your teaching of performance driven neurology,
Yeah.
how has that changed how you were thinking before?
Okay. I was thinking here's how I was thinking before.
Okay.
I was thinking before, I hope I like this interview.
Of course
So,
you do.
well, think about that. If I'm saying I hope this and I'm not talking about the 200th.
Oh, okay.
I'm going into an interview with someone I don't know. And I've been looking forward to this one, working with you here. So I used to start out, I hope I like this interview. Now that put the filter on that there are going to be things in the interview I may not like because I'm going in hoping I like it. So that means I have to experience things. And I changed that to how many fascinating discoveries am I going to be able to make in this interview?
I
I'll
love
set
that.
I'll set myself up in advance, because I'm gonna filter it one way or another. So, when I used to not want to remember, as I got better and better at this, even if I said in advance, I don't think this is gonna be very good after based on what I've read, I still have not lost my sense of curiosity.
Mm,
They say that's the greatest leadership trait you can have is to be curious, and curiosity is innate. We're born being curious, or we wouldn't be able to survive, to figure out how to get food, clothing, shelter, um, and all of those elements. So I now recognize that an interview is going to be good or bad, not based on what they say, based on how I conduct the interview, based on the questions that I ask. And if I stay curious, I don't go in with any questions developed in advance other than the first one. So we can just give the individual I'm interviewing an opportunity to go in any direction they want.
okay. Nice. That's a great reframe that I think all of us could probably use throughout our day.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I have been here in or around the room for your 200 episodes, interviews, and I just have to say it has been a phenomenal experience to watch from the start. You might have been a little unsure of, am I asking good questions? Is this going to work? To the point now where you just come out revitalized, excited. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. Let me share some points with you. And it's exciting to see that. It's exciting to see what you can draw out of people, and then the connections that you make between performance-driven neurology and the specialty that the guest is in. So I feel very honored to be a fly on the wall or behind the camera those times. So that has been exciting.
Thank you. And that means the world to me. I appreciate you sharing that. And I also know that there's probably been times where I come bounding into the room and want to share all this just like a little 5-year-old, and it's not always the most appropriate time for you. And that's another thing that I'm learning is like it's not always the most appropriate time for people when you want to share.
Mm,
And so don't be disappointed if you didn't get the reactions that you wanted. And that's another thing that I've learned is don't go in expecting certain reactions.
mm, yeah.
Just share because you want to share. And then if someone wants to ask questions about it or continue it, great. Um, but you've always been wonderful on taking that moment, no matter how busy you are, and giving me a little acknowledgement. So thank you.
Well worth it. You deserve it.
Thank you.
It's been great.
Oh, thank
It's been great to see you grow along with as you're sharing with your audience ways to grow too.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay, after 200 conversations about what makes leaders think differently, what do you believe most leaders are still missing? What's that gap?
I think leaders are still missing their influence on others.
Mm.
Um, I was invited to go to one of the CEO's company, and it was early. We just had breakfast, and then we walked into and there were a lot of associates around. He walked past two of them to say good morning to the third one.
Ah,
Now, Diane, any idea how those two felt that were passed? And do you
not
think
good.
yeah, and do you think the leader did that on purpose? No, the leader said to themselves, "There's Aaron. I'm gonna go say good morning to him." He emailed me last night. And so they're not aware of the fact that they can't leave their car until they've decided what is the best possible version of themselves that will positively impact everyone around them.
Yeah.
Because if they go in concerned, people are wondering if the company's going to be sold. Are we having financial challenges? I mean, it's when a leader doesn't recognize this either. When they let someone go and they didn't let them go because there was a greater opportunity in store for them other than what they were doing now,
Mhm.
then those people have impacted and have other friends at work. And so they're now wondering, and this happens even when you let someone go, the highest performer who's still there is now feels their job's in jeopardy.
Mm.
Because I started out earlier mentioning that the biggest challenge we face is that we wonder if we're enough,
Yeah.
and so guess what impact that makes to everyone else when someone takes off. So leaders, once they recognize that, and they get over the imposter syndrome, which a large majority of leaders have, and I've found a lot of people have, that if people really knew who I was, they wouldn't like me or they wouldn't let me be in this position. And most people have that. So welcome to the human race. I mean, we're all wanting to feel as much as feel better about ourselves in all areas. So helping them recognize that, and the most important thing is helping them discover for themselves by providing the opportunity for them to have self-discovery, then it really makes a transformation. They're able to now be that way on purpose.
Mm.
And
Okay.
then Diane, they also go, you know what? I've just been showing up at home. I haven't pulled over and decided what kind of father do I want to be now? What kind of mother do I want to be now? And they just show up and then they just expect somehow they're going to forget about work and they're going to get right into anybody tells you I leave home at home and work at work is lying to you.
Mm.
Our brain has all of that going on regardless.
Yeah.
And the more that we just recognize I need to be as present in this moment as I can, and I need to stop everything I'm doing because I've got a child now that's talking to me or my spouse is talking to me. That's presence. And that's why you're living your life is for those relationships. So be there when you're there.
And so that's what could help high performers close the gap that they have.
Absolutely.
Is listening, is that what you're saying?
Is listening, being present,
Okay.
um, not falling in love with your ideas, um, and really I get back to really staying curious, being interested in other ideas because innovation is not going to necessarily occur in the meeting until you've made what they have to share more important than what you thought you needed to offer.
Mm. Okay. Great. Okay, Larry. So you have built something fabulous, and it's called Neurominded Collective and the Brain Hack Intensive. Tell me in your own words, not the marketing language, but what are these really, and who are they for? Mhm.
Um, is a neurominded collective is a group of individuals that all have one thing in common. They want to get better. And with videos from me talking about specifics of how we really can um, grow and develop ourself, feedback is so essential. And there's other individuals in there, like-minded, who may have already gone through the intensive,
Yeah.
and the intensive is really all about moving from where I am now to where I want to be through four simple brain hacks.
Mm.
Um, there's great video, I may add. That's not very long. It's not something you have to do in a certain amount of time, but it's designed for 14 days. And people transform in those 14 days. And then there's other levels that people want more of, and they, and I'll show up in these things live, and not because, oh great, here's Larry. It's more about answering questions and
Mhm.
providing people with feedback based on what their specific issue or challenge they are facing right now, and helping them kind of see it in a different light.
Yeah.
Um, so the Neurominded Collective and the Brain Hack Intensive
Yeah.
um, are a couple opportunities to be able to get engaged and to become a part of the network. Networks are so important.
Mhm.
Um, and I am a real proponent of that. I work a lot with a company called Vistage, which has members throughout the world that get together. Each one's from a little different businesses, and have the opportunity to talk about their challenge that they're facing that somebody else has already faced, and sees it from a wholly different light, but they're transparent with one another, and they're offering their best practices.
Yeah.
So someone who's had an issue with a challenged child, for instance, somebody else has had the same issue and they had these resources, and this is what they discovered from it. Or somebody who is really challenged with the fact that this person keeps coming in wanting a new job or wanting to be promoted, and they just haven't satisfied the criterion necessary to be able to, in good conscience, put them in that position. Somebody else has already been there, done that. And that's the same thing in the neuro-minded collectives. Like-minded simply meaning wanting to grow, and recognizing that trying to grow by yourself, trying to get in shape by yourself. And think about this. You've been getting up at 7 o'clock every morning, same time, ready to ready to get on with your day. And you put on a few pounds, and you get to a point where you go, "What? I'm gonna start exercising." And so you go down to the athletic store and you buy some shoes and you get some running equipment and whatnot, and you realize the only time you're gonna be able to do this after getting up at 7 for the last 20 years is if you set the alarm for 6 o'clock. So you got your shoes there, you got everything ready, and you set the alarm goes off for 6 o'clock. You might get up and run. How about the next day? How about the next day? But put it into this perspective. Think about the power of more than one. And that is, you happen to be talking at work to a friend about the fact that you want to get in shape, and that you were thinking about running. And they go, "You know what? I've been thinking about running too. Hey, maybe we should run together." "Oh, that'd be great." Well, what's your schedule like? Well, we'd have to go by 6 or I wouldn't be able to do it. Well, that'll work perfect for me. How about I drive over to your house and I pick you up and we'll go running at 6? What do you think the chances are of that alarm going off in the morning, knowing that that friend is gonna be over there to pick you up? What do you think your chances of running that morning are?
Mm.
Exponential.
Yeah.
Because here's a powerful concept. We'll go out of our way for a stranger and let ourselves off the hook at any single time.
Mm.
It's called the
Wow.
path of least resistance, and most of us will take it. So that's why this neuro-minded collective has been so successful, as you're with like-minded people who are there for you.
Yeah.
And there's nobody there that's better than anybody else. They just have different successes and failures in their lives, but they're willing to share with one another. So it's an amazing investment.
Well, and quickly, what do you want them to feel 6 months into the program, the Neurominded Collective, um, that they're not feeling right now when they start at the beginning?
Well, sometimes it's almost like being in love. And anyone that's been in love knows that the colors are brighter and the music is wonderful, and the foods taste so much better, and
Mhm.
you're a great listener, and all of these magical things seem to be happening. And why is that? It's because you're seeing things differently now. You've got the opportunity now to have somebody to share this with. And when you've had the opportunity to see things differently in your own life, you start to get a little more bubbly. You start to be you have people saying, "What's going on? Did you shave or did you change your hair or what happened?" Because people can't say, "Hey, I like your new attitude now." We just don't communicate that way. And so we look for what's different because this I really enjoy being around them at a whole different level than I was before. That occurs in your life. And the other thing that occurs is once you realize you're just getting started. This is great. How do I get more? Because in the beginning, you couldn't have taken any more. You weren't ready for more. But as we get more, as we climb that one mountain, we see another one. And what's really fascinating is you got to enjoy the climb. And if you're enjoying the climb, you're ready to go on the next one because you've been empowered.
Mm,
And empowerment is when you've really discovered your own sense of self.
nice. Well, that sounds like a wonderful place to be.
Come on.
Okay. So, Larry, episode 200 is a milestone, but I want to ask you about episode 400. What are you building towards? Or what does episode 400 look like to you?
That's an excellent question. And I have no idea, is my answer.
Okay.
I don't visualize that far ahead. I'm a guy who wants to be as prepared as I possibly can to get all I can out of this particular moment. I have been someone who's always planning this and planning that and planning, and I found that spontaneity is always more fun than hoping the plan works out. And I'm not discouraging planning at all. I think it's essential. But when if I start to define the 400th episode now, I'll treat the 201st episode that way. So
Mm,
as long as I can continue to learn, grow, and develop from what I'm learning and then bring it to the next episode, I'm just buckling up. I'm excited to see what's gonna be going on in the 4th episode, and I'll
yeah.
tell you one thing that's not gonna be happening. It's not gonna be an AI version or an avatar of Larry talking to you at some high exquisite level with multitude of, doctorates. It's gonna be me getting through life step by step, one moment at a time, but recognizing that I'm having the time of my life right now, no matter
Nice.
where I am, no matter who I'm with, no matter what they're doing or not doing. I choose in this moment that I have, because who knows how many moments we have. I'm not going to go there. I can't imagine a 400th episode.
Okay. Okay. I like it.
Thank you.
All right. Here's our last question.
Oh,
All right. So,
buckle up.
Larry, if
Buckle up.
someone is listening to this episode right now and they are on the fence about whether the Brain Vault podcast or the Neurominded Collective or any of this work, is any of this work for them? What do you want to say directly to the person thinking that?
They're wondering if it'll work for them,
If it's right for them.
if it's right for them.
Yeah.
Um, I would ask them, what's working for you now? What has brought you to even ask yourself that question? And most people would have to say that what they're doing right now isn't getting them what they want.
Mm,
And so, therefore, I would not continue with that. Working harder or smarter is not going to get you where you want to go. Until you learn how to think differently, you're stuck continuing to react to each situation, not based on what's possible, but based on what's already happened to you.
mm,
And then all you get is more and more skeptical, more and more, why should this work? Or that's too much. Or, the bottom line is take action. It, we'll give you your money back for crying out loud. We don't want your money if it's not working for you. But there's only one way it wouldn't work for you. You're not working it. You're not doing it. You're not taking action on it. It's like anything else. You're imagining, what if it doesn't work? What if it does? What if you have a life now that you've never lived before? What if you wake up fascinated and excited about this great opportunity to climb a tree, or to go to work and find out what you like about it, or to go down to breakfast and make it the best adventure your family's ever had? What if those things occurred? Would that bring any kind of value to you? And more importantly, we have found that the sole purpose that we all have in this thing called life is to make a difference. If you wondered what your purpose was, your purpose is to make a difference, and all of us do. And the question I want you to ask yourself is, what kind of difference am I making? And if you want that to be something that people are better because of you, and that you get better and better every single day. Why? Because it's a brand new day and a new moment, and you get they
Yeah.
and as you know, they call it the present because it's waiting to be unwrapped. And it's not a present you already got, and what are you gonna do with this? And, oh, you're gonna put it out, maybe I'll put it on eBay and make some money on it. It's gonna be something you've never had before because you've never had this moment.
Mm,
And when you start living that way, and when you start thinking that way, your life starts going that way.
mm.
So, Diane, it's been a pleasure, and I appreciate all the questions you've asked. And I want everybody out there to know that even if we were talking about the 1,000th episode, um, I know I'd be as thrilled as I am in this particular moment, because I'm still not sure about what the next moment's going to be, but I know I'm going to be involved in this one. How about you?
Nice, Larry. Very nice. And I just want to take a moment because this episode is about celebrating you, the podcast, the Brain Vault podcast, the growth from the beginning to the end, and what a great model you are for everybody else and asking your curiosity and questions. So, yay! All right, celebration. All
Well,
right.
thank you. And thank you for investing your time in me, in our family, in our life. And I am just blessed to be able to be involved in yours as well. So thank you for interviewing me. And everyone out there, stop looking in the stop looking in the wrong place on thinking it's going to happen as soon as, and start recognizing that it's happening now. And if it's not happening the way you want it to happen, you got to think differently.
Mm,
And that's when we bring back that whole element of curiosity.
yeah.
So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
All the best.